Jack Turner never asked to be a hero. He just wanted to get his daughter to school on time and survive another shift at the auto shop. But when a runaway truck barrels through a busy crosswalk, Jack throws himself into danger to save a stranger, only to discover she's Victoria Hale, one of the wealthiest women in the country. She's elegant, untouchable, and completely out of his league. Or so he thinks. But Victoria sees something rare in Jack. A quiet strength, a protective heart, and a life filled with meaning, even if it's not wrapped in luxury. As their worlds collide, sparks fly in ways neither of them expected. But love between a billionaire heiress and a struggling single dad isn't simple. The media explodes, secrets unravel, and past wounds threaten to tear them apart. Still, Jack can't forget the woman who smiled at his daughter like family. And Victoria can't walk away from the man who risked everything without hesitation. This is a story of fate, sacrifice, and second chances, because sometimes it takes a moment of chaos to find the person who makes your world finally make sense. Crossroads of fate, where love hits you like a truck, literally. The shrill beeping of an alarm clock shattered the early silence of Jack Turner's modest two-bedroom home. He slammed the snooze button with the kind of reflex that only single parents seem to master. 5 more minutes, he thought, until the small feet of his daughter Lily pounded down the hallway and jumped onto his bed like a pint-sized hurricane. "Daddy, you're gonna make me late for school," she declared, arms akimbo like a mini drill sergeant. Jack groaned, rubbed his eyes, and sat up with a reluctant grin. "I thought I was supposed to be the one waking you up." "I'm 7 now. Grown-ups forget things. Kids remember stuff," she said proudly, already marching toward the kitchen to pour herself cereal, half of which would likely end up on the counter. Jack rose, stretched his aching back, and started the daily routine. Life wasn't glamorous. The pipes in the house rattled like they were haunted. The heater only worked when it wasn't cold, and his job at Dawson's Auto Repair barely paid enough to keep the lights on. But there was something sacred about these mornings. Just Jack, Lily, and the quiet rhythm of a life that somehow always managed to move forward. By 7:45, Jack had Lily dressed, fed, and loaded into his beat-up Chevy truck. They drove through the sleepy streets of Willow Creek, a small town with even smaller ambitions. Main Street was lined with local shops. Betty's Bakery, Johnson's Hardware, and the all-purpose diner that hadn't changed its wallpaper since the 80s. "Did you finish your book report?" Jack asked as they pulled up to the school's drop-off lane. "Yep, it's about a dragon who eats math homework." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Sounds educational." "It's fantasy," Lily replied seriously. "You wouldn't get it." With a laugh and a kiss on the forehead, Jack waved her off and pulled away, not yet noticing the luxury black sedan that passed on the opposite street. Inside it sat Victoria Hale, shielded behind designer sunglasses, checking her phone and sipping a triple-shot latte. To her, Willow Creek was just a pit stop, a quaint little detour on her way to finalize a land acquisition, nothing more. Jack's day shifted to second gear at the shop. Oil changes, brake pads, and small-town complaints filled his hours. By 3 p.m. he was wiping grease from his hands when the news came on the radio in the corner. Something about Hale Enterprises expanding into rural communities. "Figures," muttered his boss, Lou. "Big city folks buying up everything. Watch, next they'll rename this place Haleville." Jack shrugged. "As long as they leave my truck alone." Meanwhile, Victoria was finishing her 3rd meeting of the day at the Willow Creek Business Center, an overly ambitious name for a converted barn with Wi-Fi. She was calm, composed, but unmistakably distant. Her assistant rattled off numbers and property details, but her eyes drifted to the window. Something about this town felt different. Not threatening, not demanding, just quiet. Later that afternoon, Jack picked up Lily, swung by the grocery store, and made one last stop to grab coffee for himself. He parked just outside the downtown cafe, leaving Lily in the back seat with a comic book. As he stepped out, time seemed to slow, if only for a second. A scream, a horn blaring, rubber skidding against pavement. Jack turned his head and saw it. A delivery truck, its brakes screeching, barreling down Main Street out of control. People yelled and scattered, but one woman, tall, graceful, distracted by her phone, stood in the crosswalk, oblivious. Without a second thought, Jack sprinted forward. His boots pounded the pavement. The truck's engine roared louder. He reached her just in time, arms out, colliding with her body and shoving her to the sidewalk as the truck thundered past, missing them by inches. They landed hard. She gasped, eyes wide, hair disheveled. "What the hell?" "You okay?" Jack asked, breathing hard, still holding her arm. She sat up slowly, dazed. I think so." Jack nodded and stood, offering his hand. "You almost became roadkill." The woman looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in her gaze. He was rugged, sweaty, and probably still smelled like motor oil, but he had saved her life. "I'm Victoria," she said, brushing herself off. "Victoria Hale." Jack blinked. "You're Victoria Hale? And you are?" "Just Jack," he said, already walking back to his truck. "Jack Turner." Victoria stood in place, her heart still racing, not from the truck, but from something she couldn't quite name. Jack didn't ask for thanks, didn't ask who she was. He just saved her and moved on, like it was nothing. But for her, it was everything. Victoria Hale sat stunned on the sidewalk, her sleek black heels scuffed, and her designer coat crumpled beneath her. Her heart thumped like a war drum inside her chest, adrenaline flooding her system. The man, Jack Turner, he'd said, was already walking away, brushing dirt from his jeans, like he hadn't just saved her life. "Wait!" she called out, finally finding her voice. Jack turned halfway, eyes squinting beneath the setting sun. "You okay?" Yes, thanks to you." She stood shakily. "That truck, if you hadn't—" "You were lucky," he cut in, motioning vaguely at the road. "Could have been worse." Victoria smoothed her hair, cheeks flushing. She wasn't used to this kind of treatment. Usually when people found out who she was, they fell over themselves to impress her, or worse, manipulate her. But this man, he was already halfway back to a rusty pickup truck with peeling paint and a bumper held together by duct tape. She followed. "Please, at least let me repay you," she said, catching up. "Lunch, coffee." Jack opened the truck door, revealing a wide-eyed little girl munching on crackers in the back seat. "I appreciate it, but I don't need anything." "You saved my life." Jack glanced down at his boots, then back at her. "You're welcome." Victoria hesitated. "I'm Victoria." "I remember," he said with a wry smile. "Everyone in town probably does." He climbed into the driver's seat, gave a small wave and pulled away, leaving Victoria standing alone on the sidewalk. She watched the truck until it disappeared, a swirl of confusion tightening in her stomach. The man had just risked everything for her, and now he was gone, like it meant nothing. But it meant something to her. A lot. Back in her hotel suite that night, Victoria couldn't focus. She had a stack of property reports, investor emails, and a video conference lined up. But her mind kept drifting back to Jack's weathered face and how quickly he'd acted. No hesitation, no fear, just instinct. He hadn't even asked for her name. Meanwhile, Jack was at home tucking Lily into bed. She clutched a stuffed bear as she looked up at him. "Daddy, who was the lady you pushed?" "Just someone not watching where she was going." "Was she pretty?" Jack chuckled. "She was fancy." "Is she gonna be your girlfriend?" Lily teased. He kissed her forehead. "Highly unlikely." But even as he turned off the light and sank into his creaky old couch, Jack couldn't help but replay that moment. Not the truck, not the danger, but her eyes when she looked at him, like he was something more than just Jack. The next morning, Jack stepped into the diner to grab coffee and maybe a quiet breakfast before heading to work. He had barely sat down when the bell above the door jingled, and in walked Victoria Hale. Heads turned, conversations stopped. No one like her ever walked into Lou's diner, especially not 2 days in a row. Jack lowered his menu, already bracing himself. Victoria spotted him and headed straight to his booth, ignoring the curious stares. "Mind if I join you?" He gestured to the empty seat. "Free country." A beat of silence followed as she slid into the booth, brushing lint from her cashmere sweater. "I'm not used to being ignored, you know," she said lightly. "I'm not used to nearly dying in the street," he replied. They locked eyes. Then, unexpectedly, Victoria laughed. It was a genuine, musical laugh, surprising even herself. "I just wanted to say thank you properly," she said, "and I was curious." "About what?" "Why would someone risk their life for a stranger and then not stick around for applause?" Jack sipped his coffee. "Because applause doesn't fix your brakes or pay your mortgage." "I could help with that," she offered gently. Jack's eyes narrowed. "That's not why I did it." "I didn't say it was." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't hostile, just uncertain. Two people from different worlds trying to understand the space between them. Victoria finally broke it. "What's her name, the girl in your truck?" "Lily, my daughter." "She's lucky to have you." He didn't respond, but his face softened just a little. "I'd like to see her again," Victoria added. Jack frowned. "Why?" Victoria paused. "Because she reminds me of something I lost. And you," she looked at him, "remind me of someone I didn't realize I missed." Jack didn't know what to say. He wasn't good with words, especially when it came to feelings. But part of him, deep down, was curious, too. "Okay," he said finally. "She likes comic books." "And chocolate milk." Victoria smiled. "Noted." By the weekend, Victoria had already arranged to meet Jack and Lily at the town's weekend fair, an annual mix of bake sales, pony rides, and hand-carved crafts. She dressed down in jeans and sneakers, her hair tied back. Still, she stood out like a sore thumb. Jack noticed. So did everyone else. "Victoria Hale," a woman gasped as she passed by. "From the magazines." Jack groaned. "So much for subtlety." Victoria laughed. "I've never been subtle." Lily, oblivious to the tension, dragged her toward the cotton candy stand. "Come on, pink or blue?" Victoria kneeled. "Surprise me." As the day unfolded, Victoria got a taste of small-town charm. She watched Lily chase chickens in the petting zoo. She tried horribly to shoot water guns at balloon targets. Jack watched from a distance, half in disbelief and half in awe. Later, as the sun set, they sat together on a hay bale, cotton candy in hand. "You really don't care who I am, do you?" she asked. Jack looked at her. "I care who you are, not what your bank account says." "No one's ever said that to me." "Well, maybe they should have." Their eyes met again, this time no confusion, just heat, a flicker of something real. And in that moment, Victoria realized the man who saved her life might just end up saving her heart, too. The following week passed in a blur of awkwardly wonderful visits. Victoria returned to Willow Creek again and again, citing loose ends in her business. But the townsfolk had caught on. She wasn't there to close real estate deals. She was there for Jack Turner. One evening, Jack invited her to the Community Hearts Gala, a low-budget, heartfelt fundraiser at the town's elementary school. Lily had insisted Victoria come. "You have to see me dance," she had chirped, eyes bright with excitement. Victoria hesitated at first. She wasn't used to being seen in public without her mask of poise. No assistance, no security, just her and real people. When she arrived at the school gym, she drew eyes again, but this time people smiled. Mrs. Ramirez, the third-grade teacher, handed her a ticket. Mr. Connors from the hardware store gave her a thumbs up. For the first time in years, Victoria didn't feel like a corporate entity. She felt like a person. Jack, in his only blazer and a clean white shirt, stood waiting at the back. He offered her a drink, root beer in a plastic cup. "I don't think I've ever had soda in a school gym before," she whispered, amused. "You're in for a wild night," he deadpanned. The lights dimmed. Lily and her classmates danced an adorable rendition of "You've Got a Friend in Me," complete with oversized cowboy hats and uncoordinated spins. Victoria laughed out loud when Lily tripped and kept dancing like it was part of the routine. Afterward, Lily sprinted up to them. "Did you see me? Did you see?" "We did," Victoria said, kneeling to hug her. "You were the star." Jack watched the two of them, his daughter and this woman from another world, sharing a moment that felt strangely normal, comforting. Later, as they walked Victoria to her car, Jack paused beneath the old elm trees lining the parking lot. "Why are you really here?" he asked. Victoria looked at him, honest. "Because you don't pretend. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. His silence was a space for her to speak. "I don't know what this is, Jack," she continued, "but I want to see where it goes." He nodded slowly. "Just so you know, I'm not good at fancy, but I'm decent at real life." "Then maybe that's what I need," she whispered. And for the first time, Jack let his fingers brush against hers. The happiness didn't last long. It began with a phone call Jack hadn't expected. Jenna, his ex-wife and Lily's biological mother, was back in town. She wanted to meet. They sat in a corner booth of the diner, tension thick as concrete. "I heard you've been seen with Victoria Hale," Jenna said casually, but her eyes gleamed with calculation. Jack stiffened. "That's none of your business." "Oh, but it is," she said, sipping her coffee. "Especially if she's moving into Lily's life. I want to visit and maybe a little support." Jack's jaw clenched. "You walked away when Lily was 2. You don't get to pop back in like you've earned that." "I'll let a judge decide," Jenna sneered. Jack left, furious and shaken. He didn't tell Victoria right away. He didn't know how, but she found out anyway, when she overheard Jenna arguing with him outside the auto shop a few days later. "You're using her," Jenna spat. "Another rich girl you think will save your problems." "I don't need saving," Jack growled. Victoria stepped out from the side alley, her face pale. "Is that what you think I'm doing?" Jack looked between the two women, frustration mounting. "No, God, this isn't what it looks like." But Victoria had already started walking away. Days passed. Jack didn't call. Victoria didn't come back. But neither of them could shake the other from their thoughts. At night, Jack stared at Lily's drawing taped to the fridge. 3 stick figures holding hands. One of them had brown hair and red high heels. The word Vicky was scribbled underneath. Meanwhile, in a high-rise penthouse, Victoria ignored her emails, skipped meetings, and sat on the floor of her living room, flipping through old photo albums, pictures of parties, deals, launches, but none with laughter, none with love. She picked up her phone. The next day she drove back to Willow Creek. No assistant, no fanfare. She stopped by Lily's school, asking to speak with her teacher. When Jack arrived later to pick Lily up, he found Victoria in the school library, helping shelve books. "Hey," she said, looking up with a hesitant smile. Jack swallowed. "What are you doing here?" "Trying to learn what ordinary looks like." He crossed his arms. "And?" "It looks like a little girl who draws me into her family picture, and a man who would rather be honest than impressed." Jack sighed. "Victoria, She walked up, placing a hand on his chest. "You don't have to explain. I just needed to understand." Then, for the first time, they held each other, not in shock, not in thanks, but in choice. The following Saturday brought rain, the soft, drizzling kind that soaked into your clothes before you realized how wet you were. Jack and Victoria had planned a small picnic by Willow Lake, but the weather had other plans. Instead, they found themselves at Jack's house, Lily bundled up in a blanket fort with popcorn and superhero cartoons on repeat. Jack stirred hot cocoa on the stove while Victoria sat at the kitchen table, watching him with a warmth in her eyes that had nothing to do with the drink. "This place," she said, her voice soft, "it feels more like home than any mansion I've ever lived in." Jack glanced over his shoulder. "You sure you're not just dazzled by my cracked ceiling and crooked cabinets?" "I'm dazzled," she said, serious now, "by how safe I feel here." Jack didn't know how to respond to that, so he handed her a mug instead. They sipped in silence for a moment. The rain tapped gently on the window, and in the living room, Lily's laughter rang out like music. "You've built a good life, Jack," Victoria said finally, "even if it's hard." "I do my best," he replied, his tone quieter. She looked at him then, really looked. There were lines of exhaustion in his face, yes, but also kindness, strength, a soul carved by sacrifice. "Do you ever let people in?" she asked. "Not often," he said. "Too risky." "And me?" He hesitated. "You're already halfway through the door." She smiled and stepped closer. "Then let me help open it." And then it happened. A soft, almost unsure kiss, one that started as a whisper and deepened with everything they weren't yet brave enough to say aloud. It wasn't lust, it wasn't needed, it was something raw and real. It was the beginning. But just as quickly as it began, they pulled apart. Jack exhaled. "That's new," Victoria chuckled. "New feels good." But in the quiet afterward, neither of them knew exactly what to do next. Love, they realized, might be more terrifying than any truck barreling down a street. The photo appeared 2 days later. A blurry image snapped by someone at the grocery store. Jack and Victoria side by side, Lily holding Victoria's hand. The internet erupted. Billionaire Victoria Hale slumming it in a small-town scandal. New boyfriend or a new charity case? From boardroom to backyard, Victoria Hale's rural retreat. The tabloids spun their usual tales, twisting every glance and smile into a narrative soaked in judgment. Back in Willow Creek, life suddenly got less peaceful. Reporters prowled the sidewalks, drones buzzed overhead. Someone even tried to sneak a photo through Jack's window. Victoria's PR team went into overdrive, begging her to return to the city and distance herself. "I can handle it," Victoria insisted. "I won't abandon them." "You don't understand," her advisor warned. "Your board thinks this is a liability. Your father's estate deal could fall apart." Jack, meanwhile, was fielding angry customers who suddenly didn't trust a man dating for headlines. Lily came home crying one afternoon. Some older kid at school had said her dad was only loved because he was poor. That night, Jack and Victoria sat on his porch. No words, just silence between them. Finally, Jack said, "This was a mistake." Victoria stiffened. "What do you mean?" "You being here, me thinking this could be simple. I have a kid to protect." "I'd never hurt Lily," she said. "But people will," Jack snapped. "They already are." He stood and walked to the railing, heart pounding. "I didn't ask for any of this," he muttered. Victoria swallowed, her voice breaking. "Neither did I, but I found something I wasn't looking for, and I don't want to lose it." Jack looked away. "I need time," he said finally. Victoria nodded, tears quietly falling. "I'll go," she whispered. And just like that, she was gone. Victoria returned to the city like a soldier limping from a battlefield. Her apartment felt colder now, her reflection in the mirror more unfamiliar. The boardroom greeted her with icy smiles and backhanded praise. "Good to see you focused again," they said. She smiled through gritted teeth and signed the merger documents for a billion-dollar acquisition, one she no longer cared about. The headlines began to fade, as they always did. Another scandal would replace hers, another affair, another fall from grace, but the emptiness lingered. She donated anonymously to a community fund in Willow Creek, then made a larger gift, one that restored the school's library, built a new playground, and kept the community center open through winter. She never told Jack. Back in Willow Creek, Jack went through the motions. He repaired cars, packed Lily's lunch, pretended he wasn't checking the news to see if Victoria would show up again, but the silence was louder than any engine. One night, Lily found him sitting on the porch steps, staring at the stars. "Do you miss her?" she asked. Jack didn't answer right away. "I do," Lily said. "She made hot cocoa with tiny marshmallows. Nobody ever does that." Jack smiled, eyes stinging. "Yeah, kiddo, I miss her too." The gala ballroom shimmered with gold chandeliers and billion-dollar egos. Victoria Hale stood at the center of it all, glass of wine in hand, lips curved in a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Victoria, darling," a venture capitalist purred. "I hear you've fully recovered from your rural detour." The snide laughter around her was deafening. She excused herself quietly and slipped away to the terrace, the city lights stretching far beneath her. The breeze was cool, her mind restless. She thought of Jack's hands, rough, warm, always steady, of Lily's drawings and the smell of pancakes in the morning, of laughter that wasn't rehearsed, and of the kiss that still lingered in her bones. Her phone buzzed. An email from her PR team about a potential appearance on a morning talk show to salvage brand image. She deleted it. That night, she made a decision. By morning, she'd withdrawn from the board of Hale Enterprises. Her resignation was strategic, irreversible, and completely her own. She set up a private foundation. Her first act? A multi-year investment in small-town infrastructure across the state. But her first visit wasn't official. It was personal. She drove to Willow Creek with nothing but a duffel bag, a second-hand coat, and her heart in her hands. Jack pulled up to the school one afternoon to pick up Lily, expecting the usual math worksheets and another story about her class pet, M's Fluffers. But what he didn't expect was the sight of her. Victoria Hale, jeans, sneakers, no entourage, kneeling beside a group of kids in the school library, helping them stack donated books. Jack froze. Victoria spotted him and stood, brushing her hands on her thighs nervously. "Hey," she said, as if no time had passed. "You're back," he said cautiously. She nodded. "Not for a visit, for good." Jack blinked. "What about your company?" "Left it. Started something new, simpler, quieter, more real." "And you're doing all this for the town?" "No," she said softly. "I'm doing it for me, and maybe a little for you too." Lily came running up then, throwing her arms around Victoria's waist. "You're really back?" "For as long as you'll have me." Jack watched them for a long beat. He could feel the questions bubbling up, but none of them mattered. She was here. She had chosen to come back, not for charity, not out of guilt, but because she wanted to be here. "I kept the cocoa," he said at last. "Still got the marshmallows, too." She smiled. "Then maybe we should talk." 1 year later. The bell over the cafe door jingled as Lily skipped in ahead of her dad, her hair in 2 uneven pigtails and a backpack that looked like a turtle shell. Victoria stood behind the counter, apron dusted with flour, hands deep in dough. "Morning, Miss V," Lily sang. Jack followed with a smile, placing a kiss on Victoria's cheek. "Best breakfast in town," he said, grabbing 2 mugs from the shelf. The cafe was theirs now, an old building they had renovated together with help from the community. Half coffee shop, half children's reading nook, it had become a heartbeat of Willow Creek. A place where billionaires had no titles and single dads weren't invisible. On one wall hung a framed photo, the 3 of them at the school fair, cotton candy in hand, faces glowing. Business was modest but fulfilling. Their lives were still full of challenges, bills, parenting, minor disagreements over who forgot to buy milk. But it was real. It was theirs. As Victoria swept flour from her hands and joined them at the table, Lily pulled out a new drawing. "This is our family," she said proudly. "You, Daddy, me, and Mr. Fluffers." Victoria laughed. "Well, I guess we're officially complete." Jack reached for her hand under the table, fingers interlacing. "No headlines, no chaos, just love, honest, hard-earned, and finally exactly where it belonged."